Ziegler, the Alpha Dog, and we have a monumental broadcast for you today. Something you never thought you'd see in a million, billion, trillion years if you weren't here, Brian. Yes, that's right. Jim Ziegler and Brian Pasch on the same broadcast in harmony.
That's right.
Absolute harmony. No disagreement on this broadcast because the subject is bigger than both of us.
For sure, Jim.
We're going to talk about manufacturer and vendor overreach. We're going to talk about the people in this industry. I'll get my hat straight here. There we are. Look like a rapper. Okay, let's get okay. Okay, we're going to talk about vendor overreach. We're going to talk about manufacturer overreach. We're going to talk about, are they going to boot the dealers and start their own business? Do manufacturers believe they can operate their own franchises without dealers, which I believe they can. Everybody heard what I just said. I believe that they believe they can. And the other thing is, what vendors are assisting on this? Is it the fact that the boards of all of these corporations, Stellantis, Ford, let's go over to GM. GM's quietly watching everything that's going on. They are a participant. Trust me, CarBravo. Okay, my fellow broadcaster today, Brian Pasch. Brian, what's your slant?
Well, I just got back from Europe, and we would have never thought over the years that the agency model, where dealers are basically a delivery center, could be possible here in the States. I think that just like questioning whether the Bible is accurate or not, and people say, hey, that's sacred, I think dealers have thought that the franchise laws are going to protect them. But the fact is that with GM and Ford's announcement that EV customers are different, and this will be done through a national website with a single end-to-end retail MSRP with a fixed profit to the dealer. It looks consumer direct to me. It looks like the agency model to me. And there's many implications, especially when some of the manufacturers don't do build to order. Ford and GM looks like they're going to build to order. And many industry veterans, Jim, you've been around.
They had a brain. Built to order is never going to work in a million, billion, trillion years. Let me tell you, they can't deliver a Ford Bronco in 6 months, and the consumers want instantaneous gratification. They're used to going in a dealership and driving out with a spot delivery. What are these people thinking?
Well, they're thinking like, I guess it's Tesla envy. They forget, I think, that Tesla is a very simple car with not many options. Good luck trying to configure accurately a Ford Bronco with 6 or 7 different trim levels, 100 different options.
Is an elite vehicle. I mean,
yes.
Let's face it, anybody that can afford one is in the upper strata to start with.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that dealers need to think about is, are some franchises becoming competitors? So in Europe, Stellantis opened up their own used car portal, Spotty Car, and now we're competing really with dealers for used cars.
Okay, now you're looking at Europe and you're thinking that's going to be a foreground battlefield to what we're going to experience in the States.
Well, look at CarBravo. I mean, it's clear that GM wants a piece of the profit pie. Could you imagine if every OEM created their own used car portal? We already have 4 or 5. Could you imagine 20 places for consumers to go shopping? And what's unspoken, Jim, does GM eventually say, hey, dealers, if you want to be in CarBravo, you can't list your cars in AutoTrader, Cars.com, Car Gurus, and flexing their power even more?
That's the other thing we're going to talk about today, Brian, is the manufacturers controlling which vendors you can do business with.
Or in this case, with GM's announcement with Techion, dealers who sell EV vehicles will have to use the Tekion DRP, the digital retailing platform, end to end. So if a dealer already has a DMS, already has a CRM, already has a sales process, in order to sell EV cars, they're going to have to use this platform, which takes away, for the first time, dealer choice in software and sales process. And I'm fighting for a middle ground so dealers still have choice.
Okay, in the past, it's always been Shifty Digital, and now all of a sudden we've got they're saying you have to. And Tekion is a great platform.
Yes,
Great platform if the dealers chose to use it. But if the dealers have no other choice, and Brian, I got something I bet you didn't realize. Did you know that Stellantis just raised the price on the Ram 1500, the bread and butter truck for Stellantis by $3,000?
Did not hear that.
Yeah, $3,000. They saw the dealers making all this additional profit, and right away they're scooping it on their side of the ledger.
Well, listen, I hope that dealers stand up, Jim. This broadcast should be a wake-up call for dealers, for NADA. I mean, we do have some protections here, but listen, I'm not hearing Ford and GM dealers really going berserk about this build-to-order national portal one price model.
There's a problem, Brian. The problem is there are bell cow dealers. And these dealers, I'm not going to say they sold out to the manufacturer, but they sold out to the manufacturer. There are certain bell cow dealers that are ringing that this is the greatest. They're in on it. Excuse me, a handful of dealers that are in on it with the manufacturers, and it's a plot, in my opinion. Did I say my opinion? Yes, I did. Yeah, well, this is your opinion too, right, Brian?
That's right. And Jim, I think the key here I want to mention is that there's some OEMs that believe in the franchise model and are building trust with their dealers. And there's others that are not. Once trust is broken, then you really have a problem. I'll give you an example. In Europe, Stellantis 2 years ago canceled every dealer contract, even though these dealers have built beautiful facilities, not to the degree of the US, but let's say multi-million-dollar facilities. Stellantis cancels their contract about a year and a half ago. Today, Stellantis is just going back to the dealers that they want to invite back, only those. They still are not telling the dealers how much they're going to get per vehicle. And here's the bigger thing. They want them to be agents. So if a dealer built this beautiful showroom, Stellantis is saying, look, I only need you to show 8, 10 different models. So we'll pay you 15% of your overhead costs because we only need X thousand square feet. That big building that we told you needed to buy, well, we're not paying for that.
We're not paying for that anymore. And guess what? I saw recently the Lincoln showroom of the future, a one-car showroom with customers wearing Oculuses and buying the car on a Game Boy.
Well, listen, here's what I'm hearing from the manufacturer side. They want to improve the efficiency of the distribution channel. What I interpret that as, depending on the OEM, some OEM means let's eliminate the traditional dealer model. Other OEMs is with better cooperation with the dealer. So I think it's a game of the people who are still building trust with their franchise dealer network and those that are not.
You got a point there, but what we're seeing right now is I wrote an article that resounded around it bounced all over the inventory, the interspace. Everybody saw that I said that Ford was going to ditch their dealers, and I believe that. And when they announced, they're so afraid of Tesla. The board is so infatuated with Tesla. You know, Tesla is a minute part of the market. Carvana is a minute part of the market. Statistically, they're making billions, but statistically, they're just a small fraction of the business. They're not the mainstream public. I've done business for 48 years based on what most people will do most of the time. I become a millionaire because I know what most people will do most of the time. They're concentrating on what some of the people will do some of the time.
Yeah, and listen, if I was GM or Ford, if Techion came to me, I'm just making a hypothetical. Hey, you know all these vendors, you got 100 cooks in the kitchen. There's millions of dollars paid for data mining, data transfer, data hygiene. Hey, we're going to build one platform end to end. It will be all brand new. One solution, real-time data, blah, blah. And I understand from a franchise model how a single system. Problem is, the larger dealer groups, the people who've already invested millions of dollars in creating a better customer experience, are not given choice. And at NADA, I proposed a new framework that would allow OEMs to get what they want, which is a more end-to-end picture of the consumer journey and ownership, but still protecting choice. Now, the OEMs have not directly responded, although I presented to a group of them at NADA. But we have to preserve dealer choice because that's where the entrepreneurs win. That's where the sales process is sustainable, and that's where vendors can innovate. If we end up being point-to-point solutions that the OEM dictates, there's going to be a lot of dislocated sales experience.
Well, first of all, the manufacturers don't know how to sell cars. They've demonstrated that continuously. The Ford Auto Collections, 1999, 2000, General Motors tried a similar thing. Wes Rydell was running it for them. They were trying to buy and operate their own dealerships in competition with their own dealers. They failed. Every time they've ever tried to retail cars, they failed because they don't get it. They don't understand the day-to-day interactions with the consumers. But now we have the Right to Repair Act, which is looming in the back. The Right to Repair Act, if that is passed and becomes a national law, there's a bill that probably won't make it through Congress right now, but they're going to follow that up. They're going to keep chipping at it till they get one passed. When the National Right to Repair Act passes, then they can run their own repair shops for warranty work, or actually pay anybody, pay Pep Boys to do warranty repairs and have access to factory tooling, factory diagnostics, everything. So they don't need the service departments in the dealerships anymore. They can do that privately. They think they can retail on the internet. Well, you know what? Digital marketing isn't working. Digital marketing only works for once again, what some of the people do some of the time. Yeah, some people will buy a car from Carvana or Vroom, and they'll go end to end. But most people won't pull the trigger online. They get to a point, and then they come in the dealership. They will fill out their paperwork. They're still reluctant to fill out forms. Is this what you're experiencing, Brian?
Yeah, I still today 90+% of all cars are, the deal is consummated inside the showroom. Even Carvana sends notaries out. So in effect, they're doing still wet signatures because of laws have to change. But I think the bigger concern, Jim, and again, I'm not sure why Ford and GM dealers aren't raising their hand about this. When GM says, hey, you're going to use the Techion DRP platform end-to-end for EV vehicles. No one's saying, how's the trade going to be handled? No one's saying, does the dealer have the choice of which banks can be shown on the national site? What about F&I products? Because here's what I'm seeing. A national portal with a single retailing platform could basically mean, hey, you finance through GM, and the dealer doesn't have much choice on F&I products. And of course, that's your specialty. So when you ask Ford and GM, what's your plan for this national consumer direct model with the area where we make most of our profits on new cars, which is on the back end? No one is willing to share what that plan is. And that is really quite disturbing.
They haven't got a plan for finance. Let me point something out. 48 years in the business, most of my career in retail, before I got into consulting business, that in retail, I was a finance manager. I was a record-setting finance manager. And most deals don't flow smoothly through finance. You have to pick up a phone and speak to the lender to get these deals approved. And somebody's got to work those deals. And the manufacturers, if they have one source, they're not going to work themselves. Somebody, I spent 1/3 of my finance school teaching people how to work the lenders. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. So Jim, think about this, is that, the first area of challenge, EV customers are different. Okay. When GM says by X date, all our cars are EVs, of course, it's silly to say EV customers are different. They're just you and me. Maybe our next car is an EV, but we still want someone to help us configure the car. We still want to test drive it. We still have to get financed. And listen, I'm all for technology and speeding up the process. Companies like A to Z Sync or Fuse Autotech are enabling single point of contact sales with good back-end gross. I get all that, more efficiency, but it still has to be with dealer choice, because at the end of the day, when the OEMs need to grow market share, they're going to need to lean on the dealers. If the dealers have no incentive because it's a fixed model, if the dealers can't do what they normally do to pull the levers to sell more cars, guess what? This whole system backfires, and certain OEMs are really building dealer trust. Others are doing, well, things that seem to want to undermine it.
And they're threatening dealers right now with withholding the Lightning, withholding the Mach-E, withholding the Lyric, or the Hummer. The manufacturers are threatening to withhold prime merchandise for dealers that don't cooperate. We're already being threatened from the top levels.
Yeah, and what I don't understand, I'll give you one example with Stellantis. So digital retailing, as we know it today, is just a next step forward to getting the consumers and dealers more willing to do more of the work online. That being said, Stellantis had a program with about 5 companies, good companies, Gabagoo, CarNow, Roadster, etc. Overnight, they get an email, cancel all these people, and you need to use CarZotto eShop. And of course, eShop at that time was a vastly inferior product. But
Yeah.
So here's what dealers had built a process, really doing great jobs. They're told overnight to go backwards in functionality, and then, oh, no, it's optional. Then it was, no, it's not optional. You want some extra cars, you better put.
In my opinion, eShop is inferior, vastly inferior. That's just an opinion based on I have intelligence greater than a snail. But yeah.
Why break the trust? Why announce it overnight? Why surprise? Why push an inferior product? And then now it's, well, if you don't cooperate, or if you do cooperate, we'll throw you some extra inventory. Let's just put it this way. If dealers aren't careful, they're going to be slow boiled into believing that they're the problem with distribution channel inefficiency, and they're going to be pushed, penalized and incentivized, whatever you want to call it. And all I'm saying is there should be dealer choice on how cars are sold, and it should be able to sustain a dealer group and a single point store, while at the same time giving what the OEMs need. I think the customer is shared. We shouldn't be having any arguments about who owns the customer. And with the telematics data and all the information that's in these cars, both OEMs and dealers have more information on their customers than ever, and that partnership needs to be established. Dropping bombs on the franchise dealer network without any information just doesn't build trust.
Brian, there are only 17 states that haven't made some exception for electric cars or Tesla being sold directly to the public on the outside of the franchise system. They're not subject to the franchise laws. And those 17 states will be busted. Now, so now we're building EVs, because the exceptions to the franchise laws only pertain to EVs, not internal combustion engines. Internal combustion engine cars are still protected by franchise laws in all 50. But 17 states have carved out exceptions for EVs. And that's where Ford's coming in saying, we're going to start a separate corporation that only sells EVs. We don't need the dealers. Dealers don't realize, hey, you're being backdoored on this thing. And they're acting like they're going to have dealers. How much are you paid on a Mach E? I mean, excuse me, kids' lunch money is more than they're paying on these deliveries.
Well, what's interesting is obviously Wall Street was pressuring Ford, to break into two companies. And they were smart enough to know that that would have been like a nuclear event. But what they effectively did anyway is create two internal business units. They've created, we haven't seen it, but they have announced, right, it's going to be one price, fixed profit through a dedicated end-to-end retail system. Sounds very much like a Techion sales pitch. And guess what? What's going to happen in a few years as more and more Ford models become EVs? Is this the slow boil that, then once business process is set and dealers, are accepting this, then maybe the companies get broken up. And that's where I'm just concerned that dealers are hiding behind franchise laws as if it's a mighty shield. And I'm telling you that in Australia, I want to, Jim, you wouldn't even believe it. I'm pretty sure it's in Sweden, Norway or Sweden. How about this? Mercedes-Benz, when a consumer's lease is up, is doing all that used car work. They're taking that car in and selling that used car. They're buying used cars. They're in the used car business in that country. They're in the new and used car business. Stellantis opened up, this used car website. I mean, it's very interesting that we say, no, that would never happen here. Well, guess what? Where do you think they're practicing all this stuff? They're practicing in areas where they're learning an advantage, and then boom. And tell you the truth, my phone has not been flooded by dealers who are thinking that GM and Ford were serious at what they're proposing. But
that's the problem. That's the problem, Brian. We just had an NADA convention. And when you were a little kid, did you see the movie Frankenstein with Boris Karloff?
Yeah, I sure did. That was
like, the villagers had torches and they were chasing the monster up the hill. Rah, rah, monsters. The dealer should have been like that, but the dealer meetings were relatively calm. They didn't revolt like I thought they should have.
Well, listen, here's my point. The dealers, if any time, and we're going to be talking about this more in May at our conference in the Napa Valley, this is the time where vendors and dealers have to unite, because here's the problem. We just saw what CarBravo did, eliminate dealer choice overnight with an inferior product. Now they're putting carrots, $500 customer credit if somebody puts an app through CarBravo. Well, even the salespeople don't even know how to put an app through CarBravo. That's how bad, dealers are saying the product is. That's the opinion that I'm hearing from the street. So here's what I'm saying. At what point does it become, okay, you have to use this CRM and this digital retailing platform and this DMS and all this stuff that you do? No, this is the way you're going to do it. And at some point,
I've been trying to control that for a long time, which vendors got co-op and which, and they've had, truthfully, I've seen a lot of inferior vendors pushed heavily through the co-op programs.
Well, Jim, part of this has been control of the data. I remember early on, dealers had websites, they had forms, they had two websites, right? The manufacturer required one, their own website. Data was all over the place. And I understand that it was trying to, in a sense, herd the cats and try to create some type of dashboard that shows if I do national advertising, how much activity I get at tier 2, how much activity do I get at tier 3, how good is my network doing at handling leads. And there's people like David Kane and Joe Webb and Corey Mosley and others who've made a whole business out of helping follow up leads. I think someone's getting in the dealers, in the OEM's heads and telling them a story. They look, consumers are different now. They can order a car online. You don't have to worry about this lead follow-up stuff. And you just, you have a direct insight into your whole end-to-end solution. And if a dealer isn't answering their leads, you'll be able to see it. And if they're not calling, you're going to be able to see it because it's one retail system. And, I think the OEMs say, man, we got hundreds of millions of dollars tied up in vendors who are all in the middle. You're going to eliminate all that software. It's like, yes.
Brian, Jim Farley is probably one of the brightest executives in the car business. I love Jim Farley. I considered him many years to be a friend. I don't know if he'll even take my phone calls now, but Farley, they're mistaken. First of all, will electric cars be the benchmark? Everybody says that EV will be totally EV by 2030. That ain't going to happen, because if all cars were EV by 2030, the entire electric grid of the United States would crash.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just reading, Jim, that these super stations, that they have to build like in a mall or a parking garage, like the power these rapid chargers take is just immense. Amount of power. There's a whole infrastructure upgrade that has to go on.
And then recharging these vehicles. We got a 30-minute quick charge. You go to some gas station and there's a guy pacing around trying to waste his time while his car is being recharged. And in California, they recently did a survey of EV buyers and found out that most of them were trading them back in, a large percentage, for internal combustion engines. They were going backwards. The charging problem is incredible.
Yeah, in Holland, I think about 25% of the vehicles are EV. They're a very eco-friendly country. People embraced this and charging stations and things, solar power. But still, here in the US, if you don't have a Tesla, finding charging stations can be somewhat of a challenge. Now, for me, I'm in Florida a lot. I could use even the smallest of range EVs because I probably don't drive 100 miles a week. But that's not the average person. And like you said, Jim, we're trying to think about what most people do most of the time is they go to the local dealer, they're looking for guidance, they're underwater. No one's talking about what happens when GM and Ford try this consumer direct model and consumers are $10,000, $15,000 underwater. That's what you did, Jim. You help people get financed, and it's a rat's nest sometime. And so why would Ford and GM dealers not?
And while you're on a roll, what about people that have marginal to distress credit? How many of those people have we put on the books that the manufacturers haven't got any idea? They don't even relate to those people.
Well, listen, I think the technology, we're heading in the right direction, giving consumers more transparency on the affordability of a vehicle. But the car deal itself has many different levers, and car dealers, as we know it today, make money, a lot of money on the F&I process, accessories. Now, we can argue whether addendums are good or bad for the brand experience. That's another day. But I don't think dealers realize that, and the banks, man, I can't, I wish I had time to address the banking industry. Listen, the OEMs do not want dealers to be using all these banks. In the OEM's mind, it's like, hey, it's not about getting the consumer the best deal all the time. That means they'd have to give up money. It's about making it faster and easier for them. So, like, if we don't at some point say we still need choice, especially for dealer groups, and that's where I spend a lot of time consulting. And that's why I proposed at NADA a model, what I call a real-time interconnect hub that would allow, if GM says, you have to use Tekion, and Asbury says, hey, we want to use Gubagoo. We love Gubagoo. We just built ClickLane. You've seen it, or Lithia with Driveway. There has to be a way for these dealer groups to still deliver their sales process and give the OEMs the data they want. That model has yet to be realized, but there are a number of companies who could do it very quickly.
They could, but what could and would and should and did and actually do is a whole.
Well, Jim, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of ideas out there, but I am. Listen, and here's Jim, and you talk to dealers all the time, but here's one thing I know: OEMs have been using leverage more than ever because of inventory shortage to get exactly what they want, despite franchise laws, by using inventory as the lever. There was a Nissan, a dealer group who Nissan was saying, you got to use Nissan at home. You got to use Nissan at home. And they had a better digital retailing tool. Nissan says, well, listen, if you do it, your name in the industry will give you an allocation of X number of cars. Well, guess what that meant? That was hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit. What do you think the dealer group did? They put it on their website. Now, you can say then the OEMs pretty much can tell the dealers to do whatever they want, because at the end, dealers are money hungry. And I understand it, but at some point you have to say no to short-term profits, understanding that you're giving up any leverage.
Brian just said, stop being whores.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Listen, there's a middle ground, Jim. There's a middle ground. I'm wondering who is in these meeting rooms. Nissan, I'll give you an example. Glenn and I traveled for 18 months with Travis Chance, who's now with Roadster. He's Nissan executive tasked with digital retailing education and transformation for the Nissan retail channel. 18 months we're on the road. There was 5 platforms that Nissan co-opted. COVID comes, obviously travel stops. Out of the blue, all right, cancel all those 5. Those ones we trained you on and said it was good. Let's use Nissan at home. Now, at some point, we have to ask ourselves, who's sitting down with the OEMs and telling them one story, knowing that Lithia, AutoNation, Asbury, Morgan Auto Group, Crown Automotive Group, these are all great groups who've already built their sales process. They've already invested millions in technology. They're selling cars and they're doing it right.
Let's talk about mom and pop. It's all in. They pushed all their chips out in the center of the table. They've got their, back in the 20s, Henry Ford went around the country begging every gas station owner to buy a Ford dealership, please. And he made lifelong commitments to these people. And
yes.
Dealers have, and don't forget 2008, when the manufacturers come to us on bloody knees. I can remember Alan Mullally begging people to help Ford out.
Well, that's why I'm just wondering, Jim, what has changed that, listen, I'm not protecting any company, but someone's telling these OEMs a story that, CDK, Reynolds, DealerTrack, and the thousands of vendors to support them are so behind, so they don't talk to each other, they won't play nice. So let's just blow all that, headaches away and start with a clean slate.
I'm not sure I think that's happening. I'm not sure that's the way it's going down. But I think the manufacturers believe, because if you look at most manufacturer reps, they're 22-year-olds fresh out of school. They have no real life experience. They have no dealer experience. They come in trying to tell the dealers how to run their dealerships. And the executive level of these OEMs, they haven't experienced what we experienced. They don't know what we know. So believe me, we train the manufacturers. I have trained so many manufacturers, but they all get old and they retire, and then we got a whole new batch doing the same stuff that doesn't work at the previous. We have to train them again, and they keep trying the same things that don't work.
you could say, Jim, that history repeats itself for sure. And what I'm just seeing is that the franchise model as we know it is literally detonated around the world except for the US. Detonated. Just it's on fire. Australia, mostly an agent model. Europe moving in that direction. And now build to order. And industry veterans like you have said this build to order, and you said it earlier, is not going to last. And here's what I think. Hey, if Ford and GM go to EV build to order and then Toyota and Kia and Hyundai load up their lots with a few hundred EVs, guess what's happened? Ford GM market share is going to evaporate, and then all of a sudden build to order is going to be a bad idea. So if build to order then is a bad idea, then you can't have an agent model, because in the agent model, right, the OEM owns the inventory, not the dealer. That's the downside. So when an OEM needs to sell more vehicles and the dealer does not have any floor planning costs, and what are they going to do? Scream louder, order your vehicle and wait months? I'm just saying, we need to really have an open dialogue with, and here's what I think. Operational efficiency is fair game at all players level, meaning operational efficiency for the OEMs, dealers, and the vendors. All of that is fair. That's where every other company has worked.
The NADA? I have seen the NADA limp off the battlefield, bruised and wounded. They're not. I'm sorry. Where is the NADA? This is not Frank McCarthy's NADA, folks. This is so strangled. The NADA is so afraid of themselves. It's unbelievable.
Well, Jim, one of the interesting things is, as maybe the NADA, and I am not, the NADA and I have never had a close, kind of communication relationship.
I did.
Because I speak my mind.
I walked away from NADA. Most people, NADA boots you out. I walked away from them. They couldn't get that. I mean,
yeah, some people, Jim, the thing about you and me, I would like to make a point why I very quickly said, let's do this, when you reach out to me. See, I'm not in OEM Co-op programs for my digital agency. I'm not beholden to OEMs. The people at CDK and Cox, Roadster, Carnell, all these great companies, great innovators, they can't say anything out loud because they can get booted out of these OEM programs. Dealers are not speaking up because they're afraid of allocation. So we are surrounded by a bunch of fear. You and I can speak freely because we care about the dealers, we care about the auto industry, but very few people can.
It's not just freely. I have spent a fortune. If I were a criminal, I would be so much wealthier, because everybody has threatened me, tried to bribe me. You would be amazed how many tactics have been used to shut me up through the years. And I have always been on the dealer side. I always will be.
Yes, and there's very few people who can say that because of these OEM programs where there's millions of dollars at stake. So you're never going to hear a website company, a CRM company, a digital marketing company. They're not going to say anything when Stellantis or Ford or GM makes any decision that could be interpreted as against the dealers. So there's only a few of us. And again, I'm not anti anybody. I'm just saying, why not respect the dealer network that has allowed this industry to thrive? Why not build trust instead of these really out of the blue announcements that have no context? And maybe NADA can't respond, Jim, to Ford or GM because the plan is so darn vague. Right? It's so vague, intentionally vague.
Ahead blindly into the future. EV, every manufacturer, not one manufacturer is exempt. They're all going all in. They pushed all their chips out to the center of the table on EV. They're not going to build any EVs after 2025, 2026. They've actually set deadlines ahead of the fictional deadline that Biden said. You got to remember, There is no law that says we have to be total EV by 2030. That is just what the politicians suggested or said or mandated, but it has, we get another political power in power, and all of a sudden all that'll change. So 2030 is not a legal deadline, by the way. It's just a number somebody made up. But the manufacturers heard that, and they're going all in on it.
Well, listen, I think that there is, kind of a rush into this. Other people might say fuel cells are the way to go. I think they're hydrogen fuel cells. I was in Holland this week, and I saw a Toyota with the hydrogen fuel cell, technology. So, there are some interesting alternatives when charging isn't, available. And I would hate to be on a long trip and for some reason pull up to a charging station and it's not working, and then what do? You just like sit there and say, okay, so I'm really concerned that dealer choice in how cars are sold is not being fought harder. It just seems that there's a certain complacency, and I just hope we can have better dialogue together.
Remember, I forget, it was Rocky 6 or 7 when he was fighting the Russian, kind of apropos conversation for right now. And Rocky was getting beat up in the ring, and one of the ring managers said, he's killing him. And he said, no, he's just getting mad. Dealers, when you get punched enough, maybe you'll get mad. Maybe you get angry.
Well, listen, as much as people say dealers have power, I'm telling you, Jim, Brian, if I speak up, listen, I'm here. I'm talking about dealer group executives. If I speak up, it's going to impact my allocations. So I'm going to push back, but not too hard. And if I have to do it, I have to do it. But
I have heard that. I have heard that so many times. That they're threatening allocation. They're threatening withholding certain models, not just allocation, but certain models, the hot selling models. The Mach-E, the Bronco, and they have made almost, what if Bronco and Mach-E and Lightning, for example, became separate brands, but a brand unto themselves? There are so many ways to do this.
Well, I hope that we, put our best heads together. And part of this, Jim, just to put it in context, is that since the vendor community has been so toxic with each other, no open APIs, no open data standards, dealers have to pay, or each vendor has to pay to get access to the dealer's data. Okay, so for years, this crap has been going on. And I think part of the vendor community's lack of open standards, lack of integrations, someone comes in and starts to say, this is such a mess. It's a tangled web of wires. No one's going to ever untangle it. Techion comes in and says, we'll build an end-to-end platform, clean, and Reynolds and DealerTrack and CDK won't have any ability to defend because we're too lean, we're too mean, we're so clean, and their software is very amazing. I'm just saying it then takes away dealer choice. It then takes away control of the sales process.
And it reports 100% to the manufacturer.
Well, everything is transparent. It's like McDonald's. I mean, you go to McDonald's corporate headquarters. I was in Zimmerman advertising down in Fort Lauderdale once, and he had on his in his office a board of all the McDonald's sales. I mean, they know how many burgers and French fries were served to the minute. You know what I mean? And granted,
that is a type of data, but identifiable data of all your consumers in your database, new or used. I mean, that's another situation.
Yeah, and that's why I think the push to use cars with CarBravo is very, very dangerous. Obviously, Stellantis did it in the EU, um, and more. Listen, that's why I think dealers have to push back on CarBravo. I still can't imagine in my deepest heart why any GM dealer would sign up for CarBravo. But guess what? They are.
They
And
are. But, I mean, they don't get it. Yeah, my
listen,
God,
if CarBravo is a success, then you're going to have Ford Bravo, and then you're going to have BMW Bravo. In general, and you're going to see that the used car market is going to be fragmented. It's going to be controlled by manufacturer, and it's going to be a different world. Now, if that's the way the franchise dealers want to behave, meaning, hey, it's going to be easier for me. Well, that ease or the perception of ease will come at a cost. You just have to determine if that's what you want.
if the manufacturers see that the dealers are making a profit in any area, they're going to try to move that profit onto their side of the ledger. They've seen it for years and years. Our dealers sold bedliners. And the manufacturer starts saying, "Wait a second, bedliners are $300 profit item. We're gonna start pre-installing it and charging it as an option." So any hard ads we tried to sell through the years as aftermarket, they shoveled that. Then they started looking at F&I products, and F&I products started including them in the finance. So all of a sudden, prices went up, and they've stolen every profit center. Now used cars are prime profit center. you know,
Again, if dealers doubt the ferocity and focus of certain OEMs, just take a look at Stellantis's used car marketplace in the EU.
well, tell me
And
about that. The used car marketplace in Europe. Tell me about that.
well, listen, the dealers have been making great money, just like we have in the U.S. Maybe not to the same degree. One big difference in, let's just say, Holland, Belgium, as an example, Germany. When someone leases a car in the U.S., the consumer owns it, has a residual value. When consumers or businesses lease cars in Holland, for example, it is owned by the leasing company. When the lease is done, that leasing company takes that back, reconditions that car, would sell it as a used car, watch, or lease it as a used car. So in Europe, these big companies like LeasePlan and others are magnificent, efficient managers of assets. Well, believe me, when you look at how much money LeasePlan and stuff is making, then all of a sudden the manufacturers say, hold on, what if we got into that business? And so you're seeing that more and more.
So they're getting in the leasing business. Leasing in the U.S. Changed in 1982. I was there. I was part of it when GM decided they do a hybrid lease with option to purchase, which is what we have in the U.S. now. We open-end leases, closed-end leases. Open-end lease, you got to buy it. Closed-end lease, they take it back. Now we got closed-end leases with option to purchase. So they
Yeah.
changed.
So, but what happens when the manufacturer says, I have fleet cars or lease cars, when they come back in, I'm going to sell them on a national portal. Again, here's what could happen. The lease comes in, GM Financial takes in, the vehicle. They do some reconditioning. They list it on CarBravo. And guess what? The dealer maybe delivers it and they get a little piece and the manufacturer gets the bigger piece. So I don't know why dealers are so excited about GM getting into the used car business. I mean, every dealer group I talked about, I mean, the dollar commitment, I think it was 400 and something bucks a car. That just gets taken out if you want to have your cars on CarBravo. I mean, to get $400 or $500 on every used car in the CarBravo, of course, GM's super happy about that.
No, not with the profits we're making, especially with scarcity. And that's the other thing. Built to order is designed, and we haven't mentioned it, Brian. Built to order is designed to create artificial scarcity. When you talk about supply and demand, you know, the manufacturers every year they have the burnout sale. They've got all this inventory. They start rebating the dealers money. When is Toyotathon? The end of the year. You start
Yeah,
thinking.
always. Yeah.
Yeah, you start thinking about the big sales. They got to get rid of that merchandise. So they're envisioning that there's not going to be any inventory on the ground. They're going to build to order. Consumers are not going. I have a dealer that spoke to me just 3 weeks ago. They have had a Bronco with certain equipment on order for 6 months. And guess what? The dealer right across the street, figuratively, one of their competitors, has gotten three Broncos identically equipped to what they ordered and haven't gotten.
Well, gee, that seems odd. Well, this is why people have said that if GM or Ford decide to go consumer direct build to order, that they go 2 months, 3 months with a decrease in market share because Toyota, Kia,
Well, first,
Hyundai,
one of their competitors, and if Stellantis is smart, which I don't say they're smart, but let's pretend they're smart. That's far-fetched, but let's pretend that Stellantis is smart. They just lay back. Ram trucks will inherit the industry. While Silverado and F-150 are tanking for built to order, Ram truck and Ram doesn't build a bad truck. And you look at manufacturers. A couple of years ago, oh God, what was his name? He passed away. Oh God, Sergio. Sergio decided to make Ram a separate brand. And when he made it a separate brand at the time, people, why did he do that? It was a Dodge truck. Everybody knew it was a Dodge truck. But at the time, the only thing that he had that was worth anything was Jeep and Dodge and the Ram trucks. So they were planning at the time, I believe, to sell those franchises to China. And of course, he died before all that accumulated. But when they start making separate brands, you need to be upset. You need to be worried.
Well, and this is why I wanted to share this conversation with you, because I'm on the tech side and you've been always on the business side. You sold cars. I never sold cars. We both have a heart for the dealer. I believe that the entrepreneurial leadership of great companies like Lithia or Asbury or Group One or Morgan Auto Group here in Florida, these people have invested their heart and soul building a brand experience, trying to do the right thing, and they need to thrive. That's what moves metal, people's entrepreneurial and sales leadership. I understand the manufacturers want better data, more real-time data, and a better view of their whole enterprise. And I believe that that is a fair compromise. Let's just do it without crushing the spirit, because once you break trust with a dealer, and then the manufacturer needs the dealers to help move metal, ooh, that's a really uncomfortable conversation when you've just forced your dealers to be agents with really no skin in the game, and now you need them to put on their old school hats because your model failed. I'd rather not get there and learn the hard way.
Well, I've been through this cycle where the manufacturers come crawling to the dealers on bloody knees, 1991, 2009. I've seen it over and over again, and they fail, and all of a sudden they have to bring in an Alan Mulally with a great dealer-friendly regime. You got to remember, who did Alan Mulally follow? The dealers loved Alan Mulally. I mean, he reunited the manufacturer and the dealers, but he followed Jack Nasser, the most despised CEO I think Ford ever had, in my opinion. So
well, And Jim, one thing I wanted to make sure we do a good job of is providing some balance. And I'll tell you, one manufacturer that has done an amazing job with their dealer network is Toyota. And let me explain why.
Yes, they have.
Yeah. So first of all, Toyota came out and told their dealers, look, we need to evolve. We need to do more online. You know, obviously they weren't in love with Tesla, but they saw the potential of streamlining car research, buying, and affordability. So they told their dealers, look, here are 5 or 6 companies that we believe have good tech. Get it on your website. Here's what they said. Learn how to meet the customer at any place, at any time, have conversations, share deals, and it doesn't have to all wait until the showroom. But we're also building SmartPath. Now, year 1, it's not going to be great. In year 2, it's not going to be great. In year 3, it's going to be better. In year 4, each year we want you to look at it. And at some point, we believe that we'll have enough benefits in this software that you'll want to use it as your primary consumer-facing tool. Guess what? It's exactly what has happened. They still have not done this hard overnight Stellantis or Nissan decision. And I saw a version recently and it blew me away. I can't share what I saw, but here's what I will tell you. It is the first time I said, out of seeing SmartPath evolve, that if I was a dealer, I'd probably use it because there was enough value. Here's the thing. It wasn't forced an inferior product, get rid of CarNow, get rid of Gabagoo, get rid of Roadster for a crappy product. This was pick, but look, pick and look. And what I saw just a few months ago, I was like, whoa. And it just needed a few more little things. But I said, wow. And you know what I like about that? Then the dealers don't feel betrayed. They feel part of the discussion. They evolve with the manufacturer, and that's a win-win. And so hats off to the Toyota SmartPath team here in Florida. SET Glenn Rizzo and his team just have literally listened to dealers and gotten their input, improved the product.
Toyota traditionally has. They've been one of the most dealer-friendly, or if not the most dealer-friendly. And you know, there was a time when Kia was. There was a time when Nissan was the worst franchise and guess what? That has all changed. Nissan has seen the light. Or I don't know what happened there, but you know, it's amazing. We got to have more of these broadcasts. You and I. We need to come back in a couple of weeks and see what evolution has.
Yeah. Let's see what the comments are from the folks that have been engaged. Obviously, we're dual streaming this on all my social channels plus yours. Let's put it this way: to the dealers, manufacturers, and vendors, Jim and I can speak because we are not afraid. And we understand vendors, you're afraid. We understand dealers, you're afraid. And OEMs, I know that you agree with some of the things that Jim and I are talking about, but you can't speak.
I love Ford. I love General Motors. I mean, when they got my start when I first started in this business, when I left retail to start the current course I'm on. Ford hired me, and it was a 7-digit deal, and I'll never forget that. General Motors shortly thereafter hired me. There was a time when the manufacturers would fly me to Detroit and Dearborn and have conferences with me to talk about ideas that I had. I was flown to Auburn Hills when the Germans had Chrysler for a short time, and they were asking me questions about the American consumers. And I know what consumers will do. That's why I have gotten to a point where I'm at. And manufacturers, you've lost touch with the consumers. You are theorizing, and these theories aren't working. Brian?
Yeah, and Jim, that's what I hope for, more dialogue, because the dealer groups, the mom and pops, as you mentioned, need a voice. So I invite any dealers, vendors, or OEMs that confidentially reach out to Jim or I, share some of your feedback, because it's through that confidential feedback that we can have another show and bring up issues that we didn't bring up today. But anybody who's listening to this and saying, Brian, that won't happen because of the franchise laws, I say, stop. You're being slow boiled. I'd rather the OEMs and the dealers come together and say, this is where we have to get to. let's come up with a plan where it's a win-win. That doesn't seem to be the playbook for all OEMs.
Let's work with the manufacturers. You don't need to fight them, but they are picking a fight. I mean, I would rather us work with the manufacturers, all of us, in the fringe industry that I'm in, the fringe industry you're in, or directly with your dealers.
That's right.
I've got 175,000 friends and followers on social media, most of them in the car business. Brian has a similar large network. We've got maybe 40 people watching the broadcast right now. Thousands of people will watch the replays. Thousands.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, I got 97,000 hits on my website that parks these videos last month. 97,000 people hit my website last month watching my videos. So manufacturers, this broadcast will be seen by your dealers.
That's right. And Jim, we have to continue the discussion. Hopefully we bring people to the table, because based on some of the behavior of certain OEMs, and again, I'm not saying any one OEM is better than the other. It's just the decisions that they're making is breaking trust. And that's what I'm just here to defend. Trust and choice. Trust and choice. If you want a better, clean data record of the consumer journey and all those other things, great. Let's work out trust and choice.
Trust and choice. This has been a great hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for inviting me, and I look forward to collaborating on another conversation.
Nobody thought this was going to happen. Wave goodbye to the audience.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much.